Do you ever feel like you know what's going to happen before it happens? Maybe when you're driving and you sense that someone is going to pull out in front of you, and then they do. Or you get on a train and you sense that someone nearby might cause some trouble, and then they do. Or you go into a shop and you sense that the person next to you might steal something, and then they do. I wonder if anyone else can relate to those feelings. That sort of thing happens to me quite a lot, and I wondered if maybe I was somehow related to Spider-Man. But I've recently found out that there's a word for it, and it's just something that me and Spider-Man have in common, rather than us needing to actually be related to each other. And it isn't just about sensing what might happen next, although that is part of it. It's also about noticing things. And I'm sure everyone notices things, but I've often felt that I notice way more things than other people around me. I notice when something sounds a bit different, or looks a bit different, or even smells a bit different. For example, I walked into a shop yesterday that I go in all the time, and straight away I felt that something was different. And when I looked around, I realised that a door that was usually open was closed that day. And it just made everything sound a bit different. I don't think other people notice things like that as much as I do. I notice when things aren't where I left them. I notice when someone does something different from their usual routine. I notice when the boiler makes a different noise than usual. I notice when the airplane makes a different noise from normal. I mean, basically, I'm a nightmare, but sometimes my gifts can come in handy. I think I've prevented some accidents by making sure that someone or something moves out of the way before a crash. I've crossed over the road to avoid trouble that started breaking out in the street in front of me. But I've also driven myself a bit crazy trying to work out why something feels different from the way it usually does. I had quite an extreme example a few years ago when I woke up in the night and noticed that something didn't sound right. I thought my husband was having a bad dream because he was making a strange noise. And then I noticed that he wasn't making any noise at all. And because I'm so sensitive to those types of changes, I knew straight away that something wasn't right. It turned out that he'd had a cardiac arrest, and if I hadn't reacted straight away, he wouldn't have survived. So I definitely wouldn't want a repeat of that, but I did learn that I should trust my instincts, and I've tried to carry on trusting them ever since. I did make a separate video about that night if you want to know a bit more about it. But anyway, the thing that I'm talking about is hypervigilance. And it means being in a state of heightened alert and heightened sensitivity to potential threats. And there are a lot of different reasons that people can become hypervigilant, but I'm starting to understand that for me, it's connected to the neurodiversity called giftedness. And if you've seen my previous video about giftedness, maybe you already know about it. But basically, it's like having the dial turned up a bit higher on some things compared with how most people experience them. But in terms of what hypervigilance means, it usually involves things like scanning your surroundings for danger, being easily startled by sounds or movements or sudden changes, and sometimes difficulty relaxing or feeling safe. So I hadn't heard of hypervigilance before, but I could definitely relate to those things. Some people have it as a result of trauma or PTSD, and it can also be connected to autism and ADHD, or growing up in a situation where you didn't feel safe. Being hypervigilant isn't a choice, and it isn't generally in proportion to the level of actual threat in the environment. It's more of an involuntary or automatic reaction. And I certainly don't mean to be like that, but I can't seem to help it. My brain is generally always 10 steps ahead of me and is telling me about threats way before I would have noticed them. And even when I tell it to relax and stop noticing things, it generally just ignores me and carries on scanning. So the type of hypervigilance that I have, and that's connected to giftedness, is called overexcitability. And I quite like the sound of being overexcitable, but the reality isn't quite as much fun as it sounds. It means intense or amplified responses to situations, especially to threatening situations, but also increased perceptiveness, which basically means noticing more things. And for me, that shows up as things like being overreactive to my surroundings. If it's hot, I get too hot very quickly. If it's loud or there's certain noises that tend to trigger me, then I can get overwhelmed really quickly. And if something feels different to usual, I'll notice straight away and won't be able to relax until I've figured out what it is that's different. So these things can be a strength and can be helpful, but they come at a cost because it's tiring to be over monitoring your surroundings and the other people around you. And it can be annoying for other people if there's someone who notices and points out the risks all the time. I know that I've learned to keep my thoughts to myself a lot of the time because I don't want to be that person. But it doesn't stop the thoughts from coming, and it doesn't stop me from noticing everything. And I have read that it may not truly be hypervigilance for giftedness. It might be more accurately described as an intense awareness of the world that just looks like hypervigilance. But I think the outcome is the same, so maybe that slight difference doesn't really matter for what I'm trying to cover today. And people with giftedness are often autistic or have ADHD or anxiety. So there's plenty of overlap with these things, and they can all be connected to hypervigilance. So all of those other traits have their own symptoms and characteristics, but there are some specific challenges that tend to come with hypervigilance. And the main one is that it can take a lot of energy to be so vigilant all the time. So it's important to find time to rest. Busy environments and social situations can be really draining in a way that can be hard to explain to other people, especially if they don't experience that themselves. And it can also be frustrating when the mind keeps on noticing things when you'd really rather it just switched off and took some time to relax. And if you notice and absorb other people's emotions, it can be hard to tell if they're your own emotions or someone else's that you're feeling. And that can be a bit confusing. And other people might think you're being a bit dramatic or overreactive if they don't experience the situation in the same way as you. And you might see them as underreactive or not seeming to care about the risks or problems. And those differences can leave you feeling a bit isolated or misunderstood or even lonely. If you can relate to those challenges, then maybe you'll be pleased to know that there are some things that you can do to help overcome them, or at the least to live more comfortably alongside them. So it's not all bad news. In fact, hypervigilance can actually make life a bit richer in many ways. So before I get into what can help, I will talk a bit about the things that can make it worthwhile. So it could mean that you notice more detail and more beauty in things like nature or music or art. And I've always had a bit of a thing for music lyrics, and I like to understand and enjoy the story that a song is trying to tell, as well as enjoying the music and the rhythm. You might be really good at noticing patterns that other people might miss, which could mean that you're good at solving problems. I've always been really good at dingbats, if you've ever played that game. And you might be good at noticing other people's emotions, and that can help you to be an understanding and caring friend. And you might just enjoy noticing things and understanding how different ideas can be joined together. And if you know me already, you'll know that I really enjoy thinking, and I do enjoy my ability to notice things and to think about what I notice. But I do also experience some of the challenges, and I've got some tips to share about the things that can help. So one of the most important things to realise that because you have a nervous system that processes more than other people, it's likely that you'll need to rest more than other people. So that needs to be a high priority. And for me, I try to remember the spoons idea because I find it quite helpful when I'm trying to balance those energy requirements. And the idea is that you start each day with a certain number of spoons, and the things that challenge your energy will cost you spoons. And when you take time to rest, you gain spoons. And the goal is to get through the day without running out of spoons. And it's up to you to figure out how many spoons each thing might cost you. But you soon get the hang of it once you've tried it for a few days. So it's also a good idea to try and keep your day-to-day life as calm as possible. So avoiding clutter and noise and too many social engagements too close together. And when you remember that each of those things will cost you some of your spoons, you can look for ways to reduce that cost or to make up for it afterwards with some extra rest and recovery time. I use noise cancelling headphones sometimes if I think they can save me a spoon or two. And it can be a nice idea to try and channel your hypervigilance purposefully, which I guess is what I'm doing when I make these videos. I talk about the things that I've been noticing and that I've been thinking about. And I can vouch for the fact that channeling that intensity by making videos about it has been very helpful. And I think most importantly, be kind to yourself and accept that your brain is turned up a few levels higher than average. And that doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you, just that you need a slightly different approach to be able to function at your best. You might have a high cost but high reward system. And with a bit of extra planning, you might be able to enjoy the highs without quite so much of the cost. And I've already been practicing saying nice things to myself, so I've added this one to the list. I've got an unusual brain, but that's a good thing, and it makes me a bit special. So I'll do my best to enjoy the differences that it brings to me. And the fact that I'm hypervigilant is most likely the reason that my husband is still alive, so that's pretty amazing. I would love to know if any of this resonates with you. Are you also a hypervigilant kind of person? Maybe if you're still watching, then you probably are. How do you work with those challenges in your day-to-day life? Do you enjoy having that sort of a brain, or do you just want it to calm down a bit? I would love to know if you'd like to leave a comment. So I hope you've taken something useful from this video, but I think that's all for this time. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!